Today's stuff we're going to be learning is Bava Metzia Daf Samachet. Today's stuff is dedicated in commemoration of Yom HaShoah in memory of all those who perished in the Holocaust. Particularly relevant day in these complicated days that we're living through. Okay, we're going to get started with the bottom of Samach Zayin Amud Bet. So what we're going to do today is finish up this last section we've been learning about the mashkon, the collateral that one gets and how one can benefit from the produce of the mashkon. And then we're going to move on to how to do investments and very interesting halachic issues that come up relating to investments, and which ultimately is going to lead to what we have called a heter iska today, which is what allows all sorts of business dealings and interest and all that. We're not going to talk about it directly today. I did also hear Alana Steinhain said in her previous shiur that this week is going to be all about heter iska, which is a fascinating topic in and of itself. Okay, Rav Kahana Rav Papa, we're starting about 5 lines from the bottom of Samach Zayin Amud Bet. We were learning about this nechiyata, which is if I receive land as collateral for a loan, I loaned you money, you gave me land. The problem is I can't use the produce because otherwise this is rebeat. I'm going to get my money back and I'm going to get the produce. So how do we do it? And we said that you can come up with what's called nechiyata. Again, Talmidei Chachamim shouldn't really do this, but what is nechiyata? Where we say we're going to assess that the amount of produce for the year is going to be X. And every year I'm going to deduct that amount from what you owe me. Even though I might end up eating more than that, I might end up eating less than that, then it actually permits the whole thing. Although, because it a little bit still looks like rebeat, because it could be there'll be a lot more produce than that, because we're just coming up with some fixed amount, well, we still allow it, other than the fact we shouldn't really have Talmidei Chachamim doing this. And then we came up with a different solution for Talmidei Chachamim, which was a little confusing, right? What exactly it was and whether everyone agreed that was okay. Maybe there was a different thing. We ended up with a mashkanta desura possibly. Okay. In any case, we have Rav Kahana, Rav Papa, Rav Ashi, lo achle menachiyata. So they wouldn't eat it with this nachiyata. They wouldn't eat the produce in their fields in that way because they were Talmidei Chachamim and they didn't hold that was okay. Ravina achle menachiyata, but he thought it was totally fine, Ravina. Amar Marzutra, my timer, demanda achle menachiyata. So Marzutra said, the one who thinks this is okay, where does he get it from? What's a steachuza? If we're actually talking about a makadish steachuza. I have an ancestral field, okay, which means it's going to go back to me in the Jubilee year if I were to sell it. But I don't sell it. I sanctify it to the temple. Now, the question is, what's it valued at? Obviously, its value is going to be different. Its value is what, I could theoretically sell it for. And it's what I could sell it for in the first year of the Shemitah cycle is not the same as what I could sell it for in the last year of the Shemitah cycle, because it's going to be a sale that's a temporary sale. It could be a 49-year sale. It could be a 1-year sale. It could be a 20-year sale, depending on where we are in the cycle. So what do I do? How do I evaluate what I owe to the temple? Now, the Torah gives a very specific number to this. And it basically says it's 50 shekels for a field that holds 30 se, that you could grow 30 se'av se'olim of barley. So, and it means if you're at the beginning of the Shemitah cycle. So basically, what they explain is that it's really, a shekel in the Torah is really a selah, okay, even though a shekel is half a selah in rabbinic times, but the Torah shekel is a selah. That's how we get that 5 shekalim is really 5 slaim, which is what you have to pay for pidyon haben, for example. So the Torah gives a very specific amount. And it says 50 shekels, which is 50 slaim for the 49 years. So the rabbis calculate that every year if you sanctify a field, you have to give to the temple, if it's a year before the end of the Shemitah cycle, it's 1 selah and 1 pudyon. A pudyon is a small amount. So it's a selah and a pudyon per year. And that's how much it is. Now, think about it. The proceeds of a field is a selah and a pudyon. That's very little. That's symbolic, basically. So that's what they say. It's just like a steachuza. Steachuza lav afagav deka'acha perituva, even though a field will probably, there could be the field will produce nothing. And that's why it's very hard to assess the value. But the Torah says, no matter what it produces, we're going to call it a selah and a pudyon for per year. So even though it's perituva, amarachmana kaparik laba arba zuzeh, it's enough to give 4 zuzim. 4 zuzim is a selah, basically. So it's enough to give a selah. They're not talking about the pudyon here because it's insignificant, but they're just throwing out an amount. Okay, it's about a 4 zuzim. Hachanami lo shna. So we'll say the same thing here. We do a symbolic amount. It's fine that it's not the exact amount. Umanda asar, the one who says you can't do this, amar lach will say steachuza hekdeshi. Rachmana ukma pidyon. Sder chuzah is a whole different world. That's the world of hekdesh, of sanctified items. And the Torah says you can redeem it. And the Torah says you redeem it with this amount. And okay, so we go by the Torah, what it says. But here we have a whole different problem. This is a loan. And if you pay if you deduct a small amount and eat the rest for yourself, that totally looks like ribit. So the ones who say this is forbidden says you can't learn it from sder chuzah. It's a totally different thing. And there's no issue of interest there. Here we have to worry about interest, which is a very serious issue. So we have two approaches. Can we learn it from sder chuzah or not? Amar Rav Ashi. Rav Ashi is now going to say two things he learned from the elders of Matamachasia, which is a city. The elders of Matamachasia told me the following. Stam mashkanta shata. This is something we mentioned yesterday, although we didn't see it inside. The general, if I get land as collateral, generally it's for a year. What does that mean really? L'may nafka mina, what does it mean? And if we didn't specify any amount, we assume I get the land for a year. Probably we're talking about in a place where we do kick people off the land. Again, I said there were different interpretations here, but even when you can kick people off the land, which is what we had a whole discussion about yesterday, you can't kick them out for the first year. If I get land as collateral, I at least get it for a year. But if, let's say I ate the value of the payroll, then I could kick you off. Or if you paid me back the money, after a year, you could take back the land, but not within the first year. And that's in a case where we didn't specify anything. If we specified that it was for 4 months, then it would be for 4 months. But if we specified 10 years. But if we didn't specify anything, the standard is 1 year. The Amar Rav Ashi. Also, he said, Amar le Sabbath Matamachasia is totally different. My mashkanta, what does mashkanta mean? Dishchuna gabe, that he resides near you. Okay, in other words, the language mashkanta has the root in it shachen, neighbor, shchuna, neighborhood. Okay, so now, what does mashkanta mean that you live nearby? What does that have to anything to do with anything? You don't necessarily live by the land that you get as collateral. L'may nafka mina, what's the relevance of this? Ladina de bar metzra. This means that you can have first dibs on the property. Normally, then if my next door neighbor is selling their house or their property, their field, I have first dibs on the property because it borders on my field. And it's much better for me to have 2 fields right next door to each other. Then I can deal with them. I can hire 1 guard to watch over both. Makes it much easier. But if I have a field as collateral, then I also have Dina de bar metzra. I get first dibs over other buyers because it's already been in my possession. So that gives me first dibs to it, and that they learn from the root. It's just kind of like a cute thing. Oh, the root sounds like residing nearby. I'm a Rava. Now, Rava is going to say the following 3 things, and with that, we'll end this section and start the new Mishnah. 3 business practices that he was not approving of for interest reasons. Leitil chata lo ketarshe papunai, velo keshtari mechoznai, velo kechachirei narshai. We don't paskin like Tarshe of Papunai, which we're going to see. Remember the Tarshe of Rav Papa, and they didn't like that. Rav Papa thought it was okay to do this sale where they only paid him the money later and they paid him a higher price. We'll get back to that. Not like the shtar they do in Mechoza, which we haven't learned yet about, and not like the Chachirut, which is leasing land that they do in Narsha, in Narish, which was another city. So let's see what these 3 things are and what the issues that Rava had with them. Now, what you see here clearly is there were business practices that were going on that Rava said, this is no good. Tarshe Papunai, which is also fascinating because this was Rav Papa. It wasn't just regular people doing it, but Rav Papa seemed to think this was totally fine. If you remember, he had a whole justification. Tarshe to Rav Papa, and that's where the Gemara ends. It basically says, oh, just like, look back, we already had this. I think it was Samachay, where Rav Papa said, I sell beer to people. I give them the beer now, and they pay me later, but they pay me the higher price, not the price it was when I gave it to them, but the higher price later. And I don't think this is ribit, even though it really is ribit, because he's letting them keep their money for longer and he's gaining benefit from it. He says, I'm not gaining any benefit because, I'm not pressured to get my beer sold right now because my beer will last. I know how to protect it from spoiling. I don't need the money, I'm not like giving you something that I really needed the money and I'm letting you have it instead of me because I have a lot of money, And he basically says this is not ribit because I'm not benefiting at all. To which they say to him, it's not all about you benefiting. It's about the lova benefiting. The people who are buying it from you are benefiting that they don't have to They don't have to give you the money up front. And when they give it to you later, they're giving you more. That's rebate, and you're only looking from your perspective. You have to look from the other perspective as well. And therefore, Rava says you shouldn't do like this. Shari mechoznai, what are those? People went into these business deals like an investment, and they wrote in the document that I'm going to be zokef the revach with the keren. What does that mean? It means you give me $1,000, or I give you $1,000 to invest, and you promise me that you're going to give me back $1,200, no matter what, really, right? Mi yemer dahave ravcha, but you say I'll give you back for your $1,000 investment $200 extra. I'll give you back the $1,000 you gave me and another $200. Now, what if it loses money? I can go to you and say, but you promised me $1,200. I get it anyway. And then what does it look like? It's basically a loan. I give you $1,000, I get back $200 extra. So you can't do that. But Amalei Marbar, Amemar the Rabashi, just like in the other case, Rav Papa thought it was okay. So now we're going to see that Amemar was doing this. So Mar, the son of Amemar, says to Ravashi, Abba Avid Hachi, my father did this. And why was this not a problem? Well, you said the problem is, what if there's no gain? Then you're going to give them the money anyway. So that's going to be rebate. Well, when they would come back for their money, my father would say, oh, I lost money on the deal. And they believe him. In other words, in the event where the money made money, so he just gives them back. In other words, he was really working for them, like as a messenger, doing their, right, investing their money, brought it back to them. If it made money, great. They get back the 200, the extra. That's not rebate. But if they lost money if he lost the money and then he gave them 200 anyway, that would be rebate. So basically, they say that Amemar would just not give them the money if that was the case. They would get their $1,000 back. They wouldn't get the 200 extra. So therefore, and they trusted him. In other words, you can imagine in other cases, you might say, oh, sorry, I lost your money. And you'd say, well, go prove it, right? I want to see your books. I want to see your records. I don't trust you. And in those days, they didn't have a good way to prove it. So, but Amemar was a trusted person, so he could do this. Now, obviously, you have to worry, if Amemar did this, other people might learn to do it. It's a bit of a problem. Maybe that's why the story ends badly. So Mar, the son of Amemar, says to Ravashi, look, my father did this. So, it seems like it's okay. Amar le, tina checha diite ledide. This all works as long as your father's still alive. But if your father dies, but if it falls to the orphans, which is funny because it's he himself, Mar, would be one of the orphans. If it were to fall to the orphans, what would happen? In other words, the orphans aren't going to be trusted. The people who invested the money with Amemar trusted Amemar. They didn't trust the children. If the children come and say, oh, we lost the money, there'll be a whole big fight. They'll say, what? You really lost the money? We don't trust you, but it'll be a problem. And then they'll demand their 200, and then they'll have to give them the 200, and that will be rebate. So he says, it might be very all well and good if your father stays alive, but if your father doesn't, we're going to have a problem. Well, the story ends poorly because Have Kishkagash Sheotzami Shalit. Seen this before. It's a pasuk from Kohelet. It's like, right? How do you say this? This self-fulfilling prophecy or something along those lines, where basically he mentioned, right? Rav Ashi mentioned, what if Amemar were to die? And in fact, Amemar dies. V'nach nafshe da Amemar, and Amemar died. Okay. In other words, you have to be. This is why people are superstitious. Sometimes they don't say, if you were to die, that sounds, that could cause actually somebody to die. I've seen a lot of the Talmudic stories where that happens. Somebody says something and then it actually happens. That was the second case. So how does this work? I loan you money and then you give me a field as collateral. And then afterwards, it doesn't happen at the time of the loan. This is why most of the commentaries say it's not Ribi K'tzutzah. The Rashi thinks it's Ribi K'tzutzah. There's a bit of a problem because it wasn't really said from the beginning. Anyway, we'll leave that point aside right now. They write the following in the document. Mashkin le planya ara lepanya. Okay, so you gave your field to me as collateral. The hadar chachramine, and I am now going to lease the land back to you. That's what's in my best interest. I don't want to work the land myself. And it's your land anyway. You know how to work the land the best. So I'll just lease it back to you and you'll pay me for leasing the property. That's what they would do in Narish. It was a common practice. So what's the problem here? well, emat kana'a da'akni niale, right? When did you give me rights to that field? I don't have rights to the field to go leasing it. The field is mine, right, temporarily, and we already had this whole thing. It's not actually acquired by me that I could then lease it to you. In which case, what happens here? You're basically, right, according to this agreement, you're going to pay me back my money, and you're going, right, the money I loaned you, and you're going to pay me for leasing this property that you gave me as collateral. So I'm going to end up a big winner here, which again, debate. What exactly is it? Ribit Tzutza, because we're basically writing in this document that you're committing to pay me X amount of money. Or is it avak ribit, or is it, does it look like haramat ribit? Some people think there's a haramat ribit. Remember where there's two things going on? I sell you something for a cheaper price, right? I give you a loan, and then I sell you something for a cheaper price, and then there's two things going on, and I'm getting benefit. And right where we had that was haramat ribit. It's not really ribit. It's a big debate about what exactly this is, but basically Rava says this is no good. Now, ha'idna, but nowadays they say, okay, this was a little bit later, they changed the way they do it. They write the following. Kanina mine, I'm acquiring this land from you. Okay, there you have the kinyan. It's mine now, this field that you're giving me as collateral. Vishahine kama idane, and I'm going to work it myself for a bunch of periods. And after that, I will lease it to you. And that could work. Why did they allow it done in this way? In other words, this resolves some of the problem. If it's not owned by me, how can I be making money off of it? It looks like I'm getting interest. If it's acquired by me and I start working it myself, kind of leaving a little bit of a break here between, the taking the money from you and, right, and I work the land myself first, which also shows that I'm the owner, and then I can lease it. That seems to work. And the reason why they permitted it in this way was which really makes it seem, right, this is a famous, we don't want to stop people from loaning money. And if we don't allow this system, I guess this was just very common and people like to do it in this way. So if we don't allow it, people are going to say, I don't want to loan money because I'm going to get this land. I'm going to have to deal with it myself. And I'd rather just lease it back to the borrower. So if we do that, people will stop loaning money. So in order to permit it, we allowed this. This works. Shapir dami. This is good. However, the Gemara then says, right, getting their 2 cents in at the end here, v'lav miltahi. But in fact, this really isn't good. Okay, and then they reject this method as well. So basically, we had so far. I'm going to summarize this and not summarize at the end of the daf because now we're going to start something new. We have number one, we finished up this nachyata issue, and we showed 2 approaches to why nachyata should work or not work. This method of deducting based on a set fixed amount rather than what actually you're eating payroll, and therefore that allows you to eat whatever payroll or above and beyond that. And that was a way, again, just like we ended, it's all to allow loans to happen, because if you get this land as collateral, but you can't benefit from it, right? Why would the Malva do this? It's not really helpful to the Malva. And then we had these 2 things that Rav Ashi learned from the elders of Matzah Chasya about the standard is 1 year, and about the etymology of the word mashkon and how we can learn a halacha from it, about the bar metzia, and then these 3 practices that Rava was against. Now we're going to start with a quite complicated topic, and hope I'm explaining it well enough and I understand it fully. This is really what a heter iska is based on, and this is really all about investments. And a heter iska is what they use now in banks and other businesses in order to allow things that might look like interest or actual interest. So we're now going to talk about business practices where we partner in a deal. Now, I put in money and you put in money. So let's say I give you my money to invest and you invest my money, and we're going to split the proceeds. So how can we do this? Because in the end, I'm giving you money and I'm getting more money, which looks like I'm giving you money, you're using my money, and you're giving me back more. So the rabbis instituted this heter, which basically says that when we do that kind of business where we're going to put our monies together, and it doesn't matter if it's 50-50 or 40-20, 40-60 or 20-80, whatever it might be, we're going to view this, okay, this is actually a little bit complicated. We're going to view this as if half of it is a pikadon and half of it is a loan, which means what? We're going to say that the money that I put in, I assume responsibility for. Now, remember how it works. If I give you money for a loan, you assume responsibility for it, right? If it gets lost, you have to replace the money no matter what, right? You borrowed $100, you have to return $100. Doesn't matter what happens to the $100. That's what makes something a loan. That's an inherent definition of a loan. So if we look at this business dealing where you put in, let's just say half and I put in half, we're going to view this business deal as the part I put in is a picadon. It's as if I'm just giving you my money to go sell, invest, do with it, right? And give it back to me. So it's as if it's mine. So when I get my money back at the end, I'm getting back my money. The other part is something you're assuming responsibility for. And that's the milvet part. So you're assuming responsibility for the other half. And that's how we can end up splitting the proceeds, because I'm not really making money. It's not like I'm getting back now. In the end, I get back my money, but the proceeds, okay, I'm making proceeds on the part that was yours, and you're making proceeds on the part that was mine. And in that sense, I'm not getting back my money and basically rebeat. Okay, maybe we'll get this even a little more clear as we go on. But that's not really the main topic for today. So that's the basic idea, that we look at this as half malva, half picadon. And that's how I can basically, we view this as if I'm getting my own money back. But then we have another problem, because the part where I'm getting proceeds now, we have a problem because, and that's what really our mission is talking about, because I'm getting a benefit from you. In the end, I gave you money. And I'm getting a benefit, let's say the part that's considered a loan, I'm getting a benefit because you're dealing with it. You're working for it. You're doing everything. You're feeding if it's animals. And I'm not a part of that. So I am getting benefit from you, again, for having this deal. So now how can I benefit without paying for that benefit? Okay, because otherwise I'm getting, again, extra benefit, which is going to be like rebate. So to deal with that problem, that's our issue for today. The Mishnah says, I can't give you fruits. Let's say I have fruits on my tree and I bring it to a fruit store and I say, listen, let's go into business together. I'll bring your fruits. You have your fruits. Let's sell them and let's split the proceeds. I can't do that. And I can't give you money and invest in your fruit store and say, listen, let's go together in money and I'll give you proceeds. I have to give you some sort of salary for this. I have to give you an amount of money to pay you for your work. That's basically the issue. Because otherwise, I'm benefiting. What is charo po'el? We're going to get to what that means. How do we evaluate the salary? That's going to be the next problem. Here we're going to have to add. There's schar amal, the work you do, and there's mizonot, the food, because we're talking about animals. So if I give you, I give you hens to basically sit on eggs. So I can't give you those and then say, let's split the proceeds of the eggs, or give you calves and foals and say, listen, you're going to fatten them up and get them bigger, and then we'll split the proceeds, unless I give you salary for this and money for food. Now, this is, I want you to pay attention to the word shamin. Shamin is we evaluate how much they're worth right now, and then when they're worth X plus 10 later, we're going to split the 10. So that you can't do unless I pay you a salary. But I can just give you agalim and siachim without evaluating them. And you can grow them until they grow to a third of their growth, or a chamor ad shetoenet, or a donkey until it can carry. Okay, and this is just one second. Right. The difference between this case is I'm not evaluating them. In other words, it's saying they're worth X now, and when they're worth X plus 10, right, we're going to split the 10. And that means we basically equally assume responsibility. But in this case, I just give you them and I say, whatever's left, we're going to split. Now that's different, because you're going to assume responsibility for if they die or if something happens. So that we can do, okay? Because once you're assuming I'm sorry, my mistake. I'm assuming the responsibility. I give you the animals, and if they die, I just don't get them back. So that means the responsibility is on me. Now remember, how does a loan work? I give you something. And then, wait 1 second, let me just think. I give you the money and then the responsibility, right. I give you the money, the responsibility is on you. Here I'm giving you the animals and the responsibility is on me. So therefore it's not a loan. So if we do it in that way, it's okay. In the first case, the responsibility was on you because we evaluated how much it is. And then we get back the proceeds. We split whatever there is 50-50, which means there's equal responsibility on both of us. So there's a part of it that's a loan. Here it's not a loan, and therefore this can be done. So now we're going to talk about this salary. The Gemara is going to start off and bring a braita that explains our Mishnah, and eventually we're going to basically call it our Mishnah, even though it's really a braita on the Mishnah. But when it says scharo kipoel, how much do you pay? And this is really our main topic for today. What do you pay? Kipoel batel. Okay, what does that mean? My kipoel batel. And this is a term, scharom b'shalem, koel batel. We're going to see a lot of times, and it seems like in different contexts, it means different things. So in case it confuses you, because we do see this different times, and it does mean different things. So what is a poel batel? Going out of Amabed. Amar Abaye kepoel batel shalotam alacha de batel mine. I invest money with you. And now you have to deal with my investment, right? I give you animals, you have to deal with them. I give you fruits, you have to sell them. Now, the amount of time you're going to spend on this business deal, you're now not going to be working or whatever you were working before. You might still continue working there, but for the amount of time, let's say 10 hours a week now, you're dealing with my stuff. So we assess, what salary were you making before? Were you making a high salary or a low salary, right? It all depends what you were working in. If you were working as a, whatever it was, and you weren't making a lot of money, then basically I just have to compensate you for what you aren't working, right? Whatever 10 hours of your previous salary was, that's what I have to compensate you. If it was a very high salary, then I'd have to pay you a lot of money. Now, okay, that's what we got right now. We're going to come back to this later. I would say the Gemara is a little bit out of order here. Now the Gemara is going to go back to the beginning. And it was something we didn't pay so much attention to, and the Gemara is going to just very minorly pay some attention to this, which is, they gave two cases in the beginning. I can't give you fruits to sell in your store, and I also can't give you money to buy produce to go sell. Now, which is harder to do? The second, right? There's more work involved if I give you money and you have to go sell it. You have to buy something with it and sell it, rather than I already give you the fruits and you're a storekeeper anyway, and you just sell them alongside the stuff in your store. It's not a lot of effort. So the Gemara is going to ask why we needed both cases. Utsricha. If you had this case of the storekeeper and I just gave you my fruits from my tree, then it's enough to just compensate them for the loss of what they're not working in the other job, which might not have been a lot of money. Because it's not a lot of work. But if you have to go out and sell the fruits, take my money, buy fruits, then sell them, that's already a lot more work. Maybe I'd have to compensate you, an hourly wage or something. Now, it could be I'm actually paying you more in this case, but chances are you're not getting really what you deserve for this work, right? The poel batel is usually there's going to be a loss, I would say. And if you had the case of the second case only, you couldn't have learned the first. Why is that? You might say, that's why I have to compensate you for all the loss of your wages, because here it's looking at as the better thing. I have to give you at least the worth of what you're losing out, because you have a lot of work to do. You have to go buy produce, come return it, go sell it. But a guy who's in his store, really isn't doing much work at all. Maybe you could just do something very little and symbolic. Now they're going to say something, you're going to say what? But you're going to see that this is actually one of the opinions about what you have to pay in the first place in any kind of business deal. And they're specifically using wording that we're going to see later. This is a good example of, if you read the Gemara later, you would know why they're using this language. Even if I only just let this store owner dip their food into my fish sauce, my fish brine. If they only ate one fig, I think a grogeret is a fig. I was confused whether it's a fig or a date, but I think it's a fig. Yeah. Okay, that's all. That's enough. Just to give one fig, it's just symbolic, because all he's doing is selling it in his store, and it's not a lot of work. So tzricha, that's why you needed both cases to understand that that's not the case, okay? You have to pay kipoel batel either which way. Okay, thanks, it's a dried fig. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan. Kamahu scharo. So now we're going to see this sirachat, right? Even if you just dipped it in your fish brine, in this braita. Kamahu scharo. So the braita says how much you pay, and I'll already tell you there's three opinions here. The first and the last, there's a big lack of clarity about what they mean and which one fits with the Mishnah. Okay, the Mishnah had said, remember, whatever salary you'd be making somewhere else. So bein merube, bein mu'at, divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says it could be a lot, it could be a little. Now, this could be understood in many different ways. This could be, and it is understood in many different ways by different commentaries. Some people say this matches the Mishnah. It means it could be a lot, it could be a little, depending on what your salary is. In other words, I have to compensate you for your loss of salary. It could be a lot, it could be a little. And then that's Rabbi Meir, and that fits with Stam Mishnah Rabbi Meir, that usually an unattributed Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, and that fits fine. But some people say bein merubah, bein mu'at means you can give a lot if you want, you give a little, kind of, it doesn't really matter. And then it's more like Rabbi Yehuda, who says, which is the next opinion, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, afilu lo tavali mo ela b'tzir, v'lo achali mo ela grogeret achat. Here we have it. All you have to do is dip in your fish brine or give you one dried fig. Zeu scharo. That's enough. Which really means it's all symbolic. To avoid this rebeat issue that it looks like I'm gaining benefit from you, I don't really have to pay my equal share. I just have to do something to show that I'm cognizant of this, and that resolves the issue. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer noten lo scharo mishalem. And as I said, scharo mishalem is a term we're not exactly sure what it means. So again, to those who say it means, oh, that means we have to compensate you for your loss of wages, then Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai is the Mishnah. And Rabbi Meir means something else. Some people say mishalem means we have to pay you per hour what you're doing. And then that's a whole different opinion. So either which way, we have three opinions, which we're not sure exactly how to understand all of them. Tanu Rabbanan. Ein shamin lo et hayizim v'lo et harechilim v'lo chol davar she'eno oseh v'ochel lemechze. We can't split the proceeds. I can't give you sheep and goats, okay, and those type of animals, because they can't produce as much as they eat. So because of that, I can't give it to you without paying you something for it. Because again, shamin means we're going to evaluate what they're worth now. We're going to split the proceeds of what they're worth later, which means we're both equally assuming responsibility, which means it's more like got part of it that's a loan, which means on that part I have to pay you for. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, shamin ta'izim. He says, what are you talking about? Of course you can. Mipnei shechovot. What do you mean they don't make? Of course they make. Goats have milk. They produce milk. Ve'et harechilim mipnei shegozizot v'shotfot u'mortot. In other words, the assumption here is that I'm giving you these animals to fatten them up and you're going to make them bigger and worth more. And then we'll split what they're worth. But the milk and the shearings and the shotfot mortot is if they go in the water, some of the wool comes off. And mortot is if they get stuck in thorns, some of the wool comes off. All that's going to go to you. And therefore, that's your salary. Just like if you had oxen that were working, you would benefit from the work they did. And you would get that. That's built in. There's a benefit to you that I'm not getting. And therefore, it's as if I'm paying you this. So we have a debate here. And the same thing at Tarnagolet. Tarnagolet also produces eggs. So again, you're going to get that. And that's fine. So we have a debate between Tanakama, who doesn't allow this and would only allow it in big animals like a shor, a para, things like that. But the small animals doesn't. And Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says, what do you mean? These small animals produce. So now they're going to say, wait a minute. How does Tanakama say this is a problem? Tanakama, what? So no, for sure, the milk that it produces and the wool, that's obviously worth a lot. That's worth more than the food and then a little bit of salary. That would definitely cover their food and all that. So why does Tanakama think this is a problem? So they say, no, nobody's disagreeing about that. Meaning Tanakama is probably talking about a case where we're splitting that. That's going 50-50. It's not just the animals growing, but anything those animals produce, we're sharing, which means you can't count that as salary for you. But what's the machloket? What we're talking about is the whey, which is what's left, right? The dregs of the milk, and the like we talked about, the shearings that get caught on the thorns, or the ones that come off in the water. That you're going to be able to get. And the question is that considered enough? And then this is like, right? Tanakama tzaralak Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, ta'amal noten lo scharo mishalem, Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda tzaralak avua, like his father, ta'amar afilu lo tavali mo lebetzir v'lo chali mo legrogeret echad zeu scharo. And now this fits perfectly with the two of the opinions we saw before. Shimon ben Yochai says you have to be compensated properly. Rabbi Yehuda says just symbolic. So if we're going to split all the proceeds, including the milk and all that and the shearings, then if you get just the little bits, the whey and the little bits of wool that fall off the animal, that's enough according to Rabbi Yehuda. And that's Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda's son, who holds akin, and therefore says that's sufficient. And the other opinion, Tanakama, holds like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It says no way is that sufficient, and therefore you can't do it in this way. Because again, it's like rebate because you're benefiting. You give your money and then you get back, you're benefiting. You're getting back benefit. Tanu Rabbanan. I can rent you my tarnagolet. You have eggs, I have a hen. You want to rent my hen, you want to pay me money to rent my hen, and you're going to pay me by giving me 2 of the chicks. That totally works because that's just a rental agreement. There's no rebate or anything else. And they only bring this really to contrast it to the next case. But Ishasha amra lechaverta tarnagolet sheli ubetzim shelechi. If I go to you and I say, listen, the tarnagolet's mine, the eggs are yours, let's put them together. You need a hen to sit on your eggs. Let's put my hen on your eggs and we'll split the proceeds. That's right. So now, Rabbi Yehuda matil, Rabbi Shimon osel. Rabbi Yehuda permits, Rabbi Shimon doesn't. Let's see why. Rabbi Yehuda, lo bai schar malom is a no, but how could Rabbi Yehuda say this is okay? There's no built-in payment. You're not paying anything. How could you pay? Again, we could do this maybe if we do half pikadon, half milveh, which will, again, like I said, we'll deal with that more another day. But what about the salary? You're not paying anything. And remember, Rabbi Yehuda holds you have to just pay something small, but there's not even anything small here. To which they say, Rabbi Yehuda, ika beitzim muzarot. There's the eggs that never fertilize. But then, in other words, I give you the hen to sit on your eggs. They're going to turn to chicks. But the ones that don't turn to chicks, you're going to eat. So that's your payment, so to speak. Your small payment you're going to get is that whatever eggs here never make it, you're going to be able to eat those eggs. Tanu Rabbanan. Now they're going to add another issue, which is makom shenagul, and this is all about depending on where you live. A place where this is the general custom. What is? Laha'alot schar katef l'ma'ot lebehema. If I'm watching your small animals, your agalim and siachim that we said in the Mishnah was fine, or at least either they make enough money for themselves, or you have to pay somewhat, right, the amount of money, or I can assume responsibility, right? There were all different options. But if I'm not assuming full responsibility and we're doing this as this business, and we're going to share 50-50, and I pay you something, in addition to the money and whatever I have to pay you, I also have to pay you for the salary it costs if we're in a place where it costs money to hire someone to carry the animals to the place where they're going to graze. Okay, to get these small animals who can't really walk yet by themselves or don't walk so well, people have to carry them. So if there's payment for that, and let's say even if you do it for free, I have to pay you because that's something that is valued at money. So that's the schar katef. Katef is shoulder, so you carry on your shoulder. You don't change from the general accepted practice. So if that's the practice, then I have to compensate you for that. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel omeo shamin egel imimo usiach imimo va'afilu b'mkom shenagul alot schar katef l'maot. Rashbag says, wait a minute, if it's a calf or a foal, just send it with its mother. So they might not walk so well, but if they're with its mother, number one, they get they follow the mother. So if the mother goes out to graze, they'll walk with the mother and they'll get their food from their mother. Their sustenance will come from the mother. And then you won't have to pay all that stuff. So now they say, Rashbag labai schar malom is a no. But wait a minute. Don't you need still you invested in them. And maybe there is still more food in addition to that. So don't you have to compensate for that? To which they say Rashbag holds there is schar malo, ika glalim. You are benefiting, just like the eggs didn't fertilize, you're getting the dung, and the dung can be used as fertilizer. So there is dung that's produced from these animals, and that's going to go to you for working on the investment. So because of that, that's your reward. So now they say, okay, well then why didn't Rabbi Yehuda think that was okay? Tanakama, why didn't Tanakama think that was okay? Idach, the other opinion, who didn't think so, glalim afkuri mefker lehu. If I could say, oh, I gave you rights to the glalim, to the dung. But the other Tanakama says, what are you talking about? Nobody took ownership over dung. Nobody wants dung. Even though dung can be used as fertilizer, usually animal dung is just left there and it's hefker. So when you took the animal dung, you took it from hefker. You didn't take it from our investment, our shared investment, and it was as if I gave you the rights to the dung. No, the dung is hefker, ownerless, and therefore you just took something that was ownerless. That's totally different, and therefore it doesn't count. So that's the machloka between them. How do we view dung? Very pleasant conversation. Amar Rav Nachman. And now we have a summary at the end of this. Halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda, halacha ki Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, halacha ki Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. We have a lot of these, by the way, in this section. We have, first of all, we just ended with Rava, said we don't hold like this, we don't hold like this, we don't hold like this. And we have some psikam, we have in other places where we kind of summarize at the end of a section. We had halacha ki Rabbi Elazar, and then we had, a bunch of, we hold like this one, like this one, like that one. So here's our summary. Rav Nachman says, we hold like Rabbi Yehuda. But it's just symbolic, this payment. You just have to give something. They can just eat with you one day, a little dried fig, and that's enough. Halacha ki Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda, that was his son, who went along his lines and said that when you have izim and rechelim, right, the goats and the sheep, it's enough to just take the little bit, the shearings is enough to say that's my salary. So I don't even have to give you anything. And halacha in that case, and halacha ki Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, which we just said, about with the egel, it's enough to just send it with its mother, and you don't actually have to pay the cost at all. You don't have to pay for moving them from place to place, or even for the food they're getting from the milking of the mother, because if you just send the mother with the animal, then you basically cut the cost on that, and therefore I'm not benefiting at all, and that's fine. Okay, we're going to stop here and start with the sons of Rav Elish tomorrow and their situation. So the summary of the second part of today's talk was basically this idea of how you pay, that when you do this business investment together, how we ensure that I'm not benefiting something that might look like ribit. So again, the heter iska and the half halva, half pikadon we'll deal with later, but the issue of how much salary you pay, how much I have to pay so that I'm not benefiting from all the work you're putting into it, because I'm not doing anything. I just give you the money and you do all the work, right? This is very common in investments. So I have to pay you something, right? Nowadays, there's maybe a commission or something like that. You have to pay to basically, and we see in the end, it just has to be symbolic, something very small to show that I'm not benefiting for free from what you're doing, from your time and investment and the food and the carrying and all those things. Okay, that's it for today. Wishing everyone a good day and a meaningful Yom HaShoah.